You have 24 hours to give up that lake, or we'll drag you through court. That's what the HOA president screamed in my face the first morning I moved in. Her entourage stood behind her, waving papers and threats. What they didn't know, I secretly controlled their precious docks. My name is Daniel Harris, 42 years old, single father and former software engineer. 3 months ago, I left a suffocating suburban apartment and moved into the only piece of land that ever felt like home. My grandfather's cabin and 5 acres of wooded shoreline on Pinecrest Lake, Michigan. After my divorce, I felt like a shell of myself. My teenage son, Caleb, visited on weekends, but every Sunday evening the silence of that city apartment hit harder than any argument with my ex-bills piled up. My job burned me out, and I was drowning in regret. When Grandpa passed, his will left me this property. At first, I hesitated. The cabin was old, the dock crooked, and the roof leaked in 3 places. But when I stood there at sunrise, lake mist curling around my boots, listening to loons calling across the water, I knew this place was salvation. I cashed out what little savings I had left, packed my tools, and moved in. This wasn't just about escaping the city. It was about proving to Caleb that his dad could still build something real. I wanted him to see me not as the man who lost everything, but as the man who rebuilt. The cabin smelled of cedar beams and old pipe tobacco, like Grandpa was still there, grumbling about nails being too expensive and coffee never strong enough. Every board I sanded, every shingle I hammered, felt like therapy. Finally, I wasn't staring at screens. I was shaping wood, breathing fresh air, living. I thought the only challenge ahead was patching holes in the roof or fixing the rusted plumbing. What I didn't know then was that the real storm wouldn't come from leaking pipes or rotting wood. It would come from an HOA determined to steal not just my peace, but my lake. Started on a Tuesday morning. I was unloading lumber from my truck when 3 glossy black SUVs rolled up, engines humming like predators circling prey. Out stepped Victoria Lang, Pinecrest Lake's HOA president, flanked by 2 clipboard warriors in matching polo shirts. Victoria was mid-50s, sharp suit, sharper glare. Her perfume hit me like chemical warfare, clashing with the clean scent of pine. She didn't ask permission. She marched onto my land like a queen inspecting conquered territory. "Are you the individual responsible for occupying this property?" she demanded, pronouncing individual like it was an insult. I wiped sweat from my forehead. "Daniel Harris. This is my grandfather's property. I live here now." Her eyes swept over my work boots, my old truck, the half-sanded planks on my porch. She sneered. "This property is subject to HOA covenants. Your use of the lake is unauthorized. That dock," she jabbed her manicured finger toward Grandpa's weathered dock, "violates multiple community standards." I stared at her, then at the dock. The same dock Grandpa built in 1975 with his bare hands. "That dock's been here longer than your bylaws," I said flatly. She shoved papers into my chest. "Remove it in 24 hours. Fines begin immediately if you refuse. Daily penalties double weekly. You've inherited obligations. This lake is communal property, and you are trespassing on shared resources." I skimmed the papers. HOA legal jargon, threats of thousands in fines. My jaw clenched. My grandfather bought this land. Deeded. Recorded. This shoreline is mine. Her eyes glittered with cold amusement. "Be careful, Mr. Harris. Pinecrest Lakes maintains standards. Outsiders like you rarely thrive here. It would be a shame for your family to feel embarrassed." That last word stung like a slap. She knew about Caleb. She'd done her homework. I kept my voice steady. "You enjoy the lake, Mrs. Lang?" She smirked. "Of course. My family's dock is the jewel of this community." I nodded slowly, filing that away, because what she didn't know, the very thing that would unravel her kingdom, was that every dock on this lake sat on shoreline tied to Grandpa's deed, which meant legally they all belonged to me. Victoria didn't wait for 24 hours. The very next morning, she returned with her lawyer, a frazzled man in a wrinkled suit whose briefcase looked held together by duct tape. "You're in violation of HOA bylaws," he stammered, handing me another stack of papers. You owe $12,000 in retroactive fines. I laughed. For living on my own land? Victoria smiled, sharp as broken glass. For trespassing on our lake. You can't afford to fight this. Sell us the property, or drown in legal fees. That was the beginning. Within a week, I found anonymous complaints filed against me at the county office, alleged environmental violations for building too close to wetlands. Even though my cabin had been there for decades, cars began parking across my driveway, not blocking completely, just enough to force me into awkward maneuvers. Signs appeared on the road, hazardous site, authorized personnel only. Contractors refused to deliver supplies, spooked by rumors that my land was contaminated. Then came the online attacks. A Facebook group popped up, Keep Pinecrest Safe. My picture, stolen from an old LinkedIn profile, plastered under captions. Dangerous outsider, threat to children, doesn't belong. Caleb saw it, called me in tears. Dad, kids at school are saying you're some creep who's gonna poison the lake. What's happening? My blood boiled. Victoria hadn't just targeted me. She was weaponizing my son's trust. But the more desperate her tactics grew, the more I knew she was hiding something. People only fight this dirty when they have something enormous to lose. I drove straight to the county courthouse, the air inside thick with dust and old paper. The clerk, an older woman named Betty, helped me sift through property records. What I found made my jaw drop. In 1984, my grandfather had purchased not just his 5 acres of forest and cabin, but the entire shoreline rights around Pinecrest Lake. Every dock, every boathouse, every inch of access depended legally on his land. Victoria's family dock? On my grandfather's deed. The HOA's so-called community boat launch? On my grandfather's deed. And when Grandpa passed, those rights transferred to me. Betty raised her eyebrows. Looks like your neighbors have been using your shoreline for decades without paying a dime. If you wanted, you could shut down every dock tomorrow. I stared at the map, heartbeat pounding. This wasn't just a property dispute. This was leverage. Massive leverage. I called Sarah Kim, a sharp real estate attorney known for dismantling crooked HOAs. She scanned the deeds, her expression tightening into a smirk. This is ironclad, she said. Your grandfather reserved riparian rights, the lakefront access. That means every dock is technically trespassing on your property. You own their access. Without your permission, their homes lose half their value. Plan began forming. We'd expose Victoria's harassment, her lies, and then reveal the bombshell. I controlled the very thing she claimed as hers. But Sarah warned me, people like her don't surrender. They escalate. Be ready. She was right. Within days, I found roofing nails scattered across my driveway, my truck tires shredded, a dead fish nailed to my cabin door. But my cameras caught everything. Grainy footage of Victoria's son sneaking near my property at midnight with a gas can. Evidence. The kind of evidence that would bury them. Victoria called an emergency HOA meeting at the community center. Flyers plastered the neighborhood. Stop the dangerous trespasser. Save our lake. I showed up with Sarah, a leather folder under my arm. Inside, every deed, every record, every piece of evidence. Victoria stood at the podium, her voice booming. This outsider threatens our homes, our children, our very way of life. He owes the HOA thousands in fines and refuses to comply. Tonight, we must decide how to remove him. The crowd cheered. Neighbors glared at me like I was a criminal. I waited until she finished her fiery speech. Then I walked slowly to the front. My name is Daniel Harris, I said, voice steady. And you've all been lied to. I opened the folder and spread deeds across the podium. My grandfather purchased shoreline rights to this entire lake. Every dock, every boat launch, including yours, Victoria, sits on my property. Which means the person trespassing is you. The room erupted. Gasps, shouts, neighbors turning on each other. Victoria lunged for the papers, but Sheriff Davidson, who'd been quietly observing, intercepted. He scanned the documents, then glared at her. Ma'am, you've been collecting fees for land you don't own. Victoria's mask cracked. This is fraud. He forged. Not forged, Sarah cut in, holding up notarized copies. Filed legally decades ago. And we have video evidence of your son attempting arson on Mr. Harris's property. Silence. Neighbors began whispering, eyes wide with betrayal. I looked at them and said, I'm not here for revenge, but the harassment stops tonight. Those who joined in Victoria's campaign, your dock leases are terminated. Everyone else, you'll finally have fair agreements, at half the cost you've been paying to this corrupt HOA. The sheriff placed Victoria in handcuffs as cameras flashed. Her final scream echoed off the walls. You can't do this. I am this community. But no one believed her anymore. 3 months later, Pinecrest Lake was unrecognizable. Victoria was serving prison time for fraud and harassment. Her closest allies quietly sold their homes and left. The rest of the neighborhood embraced the change. Instead of HOA fees vanishing into Victoria's pocket, residents signed fair leases with me. Half the cost, fully transparent. Families finally had money for repairs, education, and savings. We built a community garden where Victoria once issued citations for unapproved plants. Kids played freely on docks without fear of fines. Caleb beamed when he visited, saying, Dad, you turned this place into something real. The best part? I established the Harris Lake Fund, using recovered HOA money to help other families fight back against corrupt associations. Calls poured in from across the state. We weren't just fixing one lake. We were inspiring others to stand up. Sometimes the people who think they own everything actually own nothing. And sometimes the quiet guy they try to push out is the one holding all the cards. If your HOA tried to steal your lake, your yard, or your freedom, what would you do? Drop your story in the comments. I read every one. And if this fight proved anything, it's that ordinary people can take down corrupt systems. You just need the truth and the courage to use it. So hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because next week, I'll tell you how another HOA tried to seize a family farm for a shopping mall.